Hey! I'm back with another unplanned video. Well, this isn't really for Evan, Cherry, and April, but it is sort of like a response or sequel or just the next chapter of my journey in responding to one of the videos I put out in Evan, Cherry, and April, which is that video about my creative identity, the wounds that I was dealt, and how I healed, and the things that I came to realize. So if you watched that video, you'll probably notice I was really angry in that video. It was almost like a rant, so I hope that I didn't dish out like any negative energy. If I did, I'm really sorry, but this video will hopefully rectify that. So I think this is kind of like not like the most original or sort of like a typical follow-up to like an angry ranty video, which is this is a video about forgiveness. So like I know like the spiritual idea of forgiveness is like isn't really about like excusing the other person or forgiving the other person. It's about allowing yourself to move on and then opening your heart up again, and also just be in a space of openness and releasing yourself from the past. So you know, forgiveness. And like logically speaking, I could really understand that. I think I practiced forgiveness, of course, just through different times of my life. But I wanted to share with you this vision or this sort of idea that I had when I was thinking about and processing again the experiences that I had with that Chinese writing teacher that really censored me, rejected me, judged me, and manipulated me into wanting to become someone I'm not, and also just sabotaging me in different ways. And I was like really angry when I realized that story. I was like I wasn't like completely enraged, because I feel like I got to a point where I was able to sort of process that story with some dignity and grace, I guess. Like I didn't completely lose it, but I was pretty angry. Like I was pretty angry. Like I was like actually banging on my desk when I filmed that video, and it was like, I mean, it was like a contained anger, but anyway, I was angry. Okay, let's just put it that way. I was like really angry, and I just like have like some bitterness about it, and just like, it was like, you know, it just felt really iffy, right? So I was just kind of like, I was telling my mother about it. I was also just reflecting on the spot, and then this vision came to me. Because one of the things that we talked about when I was talking to my mother was that because she grew up in an educational system with values that are about censorship and oppression, so I think she had like an insight about what my teacher was thinking, and I think I was aware of that too, but I just didn't think about it a lot. And I think it was sort of just a standard way of maintaining power, which was, if you're the authority figure, if you're the teacher, you're not supposed to, you know, like other people or students, like especially students or kids, you're not supposed to question your teacher, because you're supposed to give them the respect and the obedience and you know all of that to this authority figure. And I think that's how that's just how they operate. It wasn't that she was particularly malicious, it was just that was the value system she was brought up with. So I think by thinking that, I was able to have a lot of empathy for her, but I just still could not completely let her go. And then this interesting vision appeared. So I was reflecting on at least how I reacted as a 13-year-old kid. I mean, like didn't have the emotional and strength and maturity to really stand my ground and express what I need to say. But I was just thinking that, one, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm much more mature and much more emotionally aware. I know how to tap into my own strength when it comes to needing to stand my ground and needing to express myself. I'm no longer that person. So it's like in my mind, I was sinking down into this insight about like I will no longer have that experience because of who I am now. And who I was then, that was still me, but that's not who I am now. That was another me. That was the me with limited beliefs and with, I guess, limited maturity and emotional understanding, because I was a kid, you know, I was like a child, and or like a teen or whatever, and that's not me anymore. And I think from that, it's like at the time I reacted the way I did because of the kind of person I was, and I reacted the way I did because I was a child. I didn't know better. I was insecure. I didn't know I could question the authority. I did what I thought was the best thing, or I just reacted based on the energies in my psyche. I just based on who I was in that very instant. And even though like looking back, I would say that I was more insecure, I was more this, I was less of this, but that would just be me judging myself from an older perspective or from in retrospect. So that it's almost like you're judging yourself for not being good enough to handle that situation, but in reality it isn't true, because you were just the best of yourself at that time. That was the best of yourself. That was who you were at the time. So I think I was like also from realizing that, I was also able to have a lot of sympathy with myself, just like a lot of empathy and self-understanding, because part of the problems with me is I always blame myself for not being strong enough, and that was like a recurring thing that I have to constantly heal from and release. And I think I had a bit of that too with this story, and once I realized that, I was able to kind of relax a little bit. And then I started thinking about my writing teacher, and I was like, well, she reacted that way because she was who she was at the moment. I don't know what she's like now. I haven't had contact with her for years. I don't know what she's like now, but who she was at the time, it wasn't the best of her either. I mean, it was probably behaviors or the way she taught was just deeply rooted in the values that she grew up with. You know, that she was trained in, like, to become a teacher. That was the value she was given. And maybe she has some other issues too. Maybe she struggled with her own sense of power, and that's why she felt the need to kind of sort of pose herself as this kind of authority in the writing class to an innocent child. And then I would just feel like that was, I just had this thought. All of a sudden, I just had this thought. I was like, neither of us were the best of ourselves. And that's only in retrospect. It's like, say, in an ideal world where I was the best of myself even at the age of 13. I would be carefree, I would be open, I would have said whatever I wanted, maybe in the most polite and diplomatic way, but also very firm. And that would be like the ideal situation. And I think when I said that, neither of us were the best of ourselves, I didn't, like, I know I talked about judgment before, but I feel like when I said that, it wasn't from a place of judgment. It was because I recognized the fact that I think the best situation would be coming from a place of love and strength. But at the time, it wasn't the best of situation because I was coming from a place of fear and insecurity, and that stopped me from speaking up. And she maybe struggled with other personal issues in her psyche, and that prompted her to make that decision. Because if she also operated from a place of love and compassion and strength, she would not have taught that way. So I was thinking that, I was just like, neither of us were the best of ourselves. And then in that moment, I feel like I was lifted. I was being lifted from that memory. It was like it was like leaving a stage. It was like I was finally able to take a step back, and I was looking at this play that was taking place on stage, this story that was taking place on stage. I see me and my teacher, and they were entangled together because of the dynamics that they were each faced with at a time, because they were operating from fear and insecurity at the time. So it's like, it's not me anymore. That it's like an act on stage that I was able to look at, that I was able to distance myself from. And I just feel a lot of relief and a lot of space opening up in my heart at that moment. I just feel like that is not me anymore. That is not my story anymore. That is not my experience anymore, because I am never going to be that little girl again. I will never ever have the same kind of fear and insecurity operating inside of me or driving me. It'll never happen again, because I'm not that person now. And so because of that, I will never have that experience. It'll just be a story from my past. And story changed. How you tell your story changes too, based on how you tell your story. So in that moment, that story changed. That story changed from me being a victim, having suffered at the hands of this teacher. It just changed from, it happened because both of us were this version of ourselves at the time, and then it happened because that was what happened. And I think I was able to detach from the anger and the resentment that I had, and the wounds and the hurt that I dealt with at the time. I was able to distance myself from that, and I was able to view it. I was like, this is something that happened. This is something that I can look at. And then this is something I'm able to now interpret in a different way, because I can look at that character on stage and say, I will never be that little girl, because I have these qualities now, and I would never operate from that place of fear and insecurity ever again. I am self-loving enough, I understand myself enough, I recognize myself enough to not be in that place ever again. So it's like, it's not me anymore. It's not part of my timeline anymore. It's not my reality anymore. And it's never going to happen again. So it's kind of like, I guess I'm free. Guess I'm free from this memory. I was able to just look at it from a neutral perspective, and in that moment I was able to forgive. I was able to forgive by really releasing my need to stay there and change the story. I think I wanted to change the story. That's why I couldn't let go. I think I wanted to go back in time and just tell her how hurt she made me feel, how rejected she made me feel, how I should have spoken up in this way, what are some of the words I should have said, what are the things I should have said. I think maybe the reason why that we can't forgive, like in general, is that we want to go back and change the story somehow. We believe that somehow that story could have played out in a different way. No matter, whatever it is that you imagine, right? You could be, maybe you wish that other person has a more negative outcome, or you wish that you did something more positive. Either way, it's like there's this tension there because you want to go back and change that story. But once you recognize that that story is in the past, that story is just an act on stage. It's something outside of you now. It's something that's, because if you know deep down inside that you've changed, that you've evolved, you're a better person, you're a more mature, emotionally aware person, you know that there's so much more love and compassion and spirit in you now. You would never go back to that place because you're not on that frequency anymore. There's no way that that story will play again because the choices you're going to make this time are going to be different. So you will be able to forgive, once you just know that the stories that happened in the past, it's what happened. That's the plot. That's my phone ran out of storage, so I can only continue this video for a little longer, but I was basically finished. So you will know that, just to pick up from where I left off, you will know that story no longer has power over you, and you will be able to forgive. So that's my little story of forgiveness that I want to share with you. Maybe this could be a visualization exercise where you can picture whatever it is that's bugging you, whatever it is that you're still holding on. Picture that as a story and act on the stage and see how you observe it, and then reflect on who you are now and how you're different and how much stronger and more loving you are now. And it's just as simple as that, really. Sometimes that moment is just so simple. It's just that switch when you're able to forgive. And of course, it's a journey, it's not like a switch that you can flip off, but I think it's like a useful imagery, at least for me. Okay, so until next time, be the hero until next time, be the hero of your own story and level up life with tarot. And I hope that whatever it is that are still plaguing your spirit, whatever it is that you're still harboring anger or resentment towards, or sadness or whatever, that you will be able to release those things and forgive. And I know forgive is such a cliche word. Sometimes I just think oh, forgiveness, of course, really, forgiveness again? But I don't know, I think there's a lot of power in that. I think you just find your own metaphor or your own way of approaching it, and looking at it from a distance was kind of my way of finding forgiveness. So yeah, until next time, be the hero of your own story and level up life with tarot.